This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Riley Smith.
Good day and welcome to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Riley Smith. Today is Friday, November 22nd of 2024. We are so glad you can join us for today's show. In today's episode, I talk with David Shirbroun. He's a professional services veterinarian with Boehringer in Ingelheim. We talk a lot about how stress can impact the management of your cattle herd, especially when it comes to disease management. But before we get into any of that, let's hear a word from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soy Checkoff.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
Welcome back to Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Riley Smith. As I mentioned earlier, had the chance to visit with David Shirbroun. He's a professional services veterinarian with Boehringer Ingelheim. We talked during the Trade Talk session at the National Association of Farm Broadcasting Convention in Kansas City last week. Had quite the conversation, and you can catch the full thing on our YouTube channel. But this first part of the conversation about stress management in your cattle herd and how managing stress can also help you manage disease.
David, great to talk with you as always. Cattle stress, one of those things that we've talked about a lot, and it's just an important thing to manage in your herd. First off, before we get too deep into it, why is it important to manage that stress for the cattle herd health?
Yeah, so stress is probably one of the biggest enemies there is for cattle. Cattle are definitely creatures of habit, and anything that's out of the norm they don't like. So what happens when they get stressed is their cortisol levels will rise. When that happens, it depresses their immune system, and so that's when they get sick. So that's what we see. The typical shipping fever that usually happens a week or 2 weeks after they get transported weaned. It's more a result of the stress as opposed to the specific bugs that they're actually fighting. So the idea is always try to lower the stress for cattle as much as we possibly can.
So we're looking at those stress signals. I mean, sometimes it's pretty obvious. You might see the scraping, you just might see balking and everything. But there are some factors that are maybe a little harder to notice right away. Mm-hmm. What are some of those prominent factors of cattle stress that producers should be looking out for?
Yeah, so anytime, like I said, cattle like habits, and if they're not doing their normal habits, that's oftentimes a sign of stress. So, if they're not coming up to a feed bunk or just, not coming up to the hay bale or however you're feeding, they're not coming up as fast as typical. That's one of the quickest ways you can really know an animal is stressed. They'll just be a little more lethargic, just kind of laying around a little bit more, not very active, not playing around like some of the animals might be. Look a little duller in the eyes and drooped ears. Now, those are subtle signs that not everybody picks up as easily. And one of the mistakes that producers will sometimes make with seeing some of those more subtle signs are, since cattle are prey animals, if a producer walks up to a group of animals, those cattle are going to be on alert for the most part. And so it takes usually a few minutes of letting those animals settle down to really get a good feel for what's going on with those animals. It can take 5, 10, 15 minutes to let a group of animals settle down to really see how they're feeling. Then they'll really tell you.
So on top of that strategy of, just kind of slowly integrating and making sure that you're getting that work done, what are some of the other strategies you can use to kind of manage that stress and get ahead of it? I know sometimes, making sure areas are properly lighted indoors, having firm surfaces they can stand on can go a long ways.
Yeah, so animal husbandry, when you look at the beginnings of it, is the essence of decreasing stress. So calm handling of cattle, moving them, not shouting, not shocking them all the time, just nice, calm cattle movement. Obviously having good facilities that aren't going to stress them as far as the lighting or surfaces, having good bedding, for where those animals can rest, keep them out of the wind and the rain as much as possible. But, really want to try to make sure we get ahead of the game too. So inevitably those animals will be stressed. So if we can vaccinate those animals prior to that stress event, and when I say prior to stress, I'm talking about, at least 2 weeks 30 days is best. If you can get a vaccine, 30 days prior to weaning, those calves will be a lot better protected when you actually go to wean those calves after that period of time.
That again was David Shirbroun of Boehringer Ingelheim. Let's go ahead and take a look at the closing markets.
It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net.
At the end of another trading day in the ag marketplace, we're here with Jason Meyer of agmarket.net. Jason, first off, what are we seeing in the grain markets today?
We saw a lot of choppy trade today. The overnight started a little bit lower. Beans actually almost made new contract lows on the nearby, but we were able to finish higher on the day. The big reason we had 4 out of 5 days this week, we had some export sales announced on soybeans. So that really helped take the soybeans higher. Corn was just kind of flat, a little bit off today, just no news. A little pre-holiday trade. We had option expiration on December options today, so you had a lot going on with that. The big thing on soybeans, I think, too, is we've seen Malaysian palm oil and soybean oil really take it in the shorts in the last couple days, and that has pressured soybeans throughout this week. But soybeans were able to kind of bounce off those contract lows this morning, despite the weakness we saw in the vegetable oil markets.
So then looking at those export sales, I know yesterday we were a little surprised, especially with the flash sales continuing, just because it seems that China is kind of starting to look at other places to get their grain from. Do we expect with that surprise that it was just a one-time event? Do we think maybe that could possibly continue for a little longer than expected instead?
That's a wild card answer because a lot of these sales, these flash sales that we're seeing, are in the unknown category. So there's some talk in the trade that it might not actually be China and maybe going to Europe. But I look at it, anytime we can get some export sales on soybeans, especially this time of year ahead of the Brazilian and Argentine harvest, that is a very positive sign for the marketplace.
And then moving over to the livestock side of things, obviously today that cattle on feed report that has come out recently, markets still digesting that. Otherwise, what have we seen in the cattle and hog markets today?
The cattle markets continue to be on fire. It's really led by the feeder markets with all the rain that we've gotten in the Corn Belt in like Oklahoma and Texas area. The feeder market has been on fire, so that's really helping to find some support in the cattle market, and that strength in feeders is rolling over to the fats as well. In the hog market was up pretty good today. It's kind of a technical trade. The market's trying to roll over, but we're seeing slaughter come in above last week levels and some really good demand for pork here. So that's keeping that market up higher.
All right, Jason, lots of great information today. For anyone who would like to get in touch with agmarket.net, how can they do that?
Please check us out at agmarket.net and give one of my teammates or myself a call, and we'll be happy to speak with you.
All right, thanks again for the analysis as always, Jason, and we look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thank you for having me, Riley. Have a good weekend, everybody.
That again was Jason Meyer of agmarket.net. We'll go ahead and take a look at how the numbers close through the market window at iowaagnet.com. December corn down 1 1/4 at 425 1/2. January soybeans up 5 3/4 at 983 1/2. Soybean meal up $1.50 at 289.20. Soybean oil down 41 cents at 41.77. Chicago wheat down 4 1/2 at 544 1/4. Kansas City hard red wheat down 1 1/4 at 554 1/4. Minneapolis spring wheat down 2 even at 586 even. December oats up 3 even at 349 1/4. On the Merc, December live cattle up $1.17 at 186.77. January feeders up 85 at 254.30. December lean hogs up 87 cents at 81.67. Pork cutout up 65 at 91.40. And December class 3 milk down 22 cents at 18.46. And that's been a check of the markets here on Ag Matters PM. That also brings us to the end of today's episode. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. Also follow us on social media at Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and TikTok, and find our video content as well as previous episodes of AM/PM on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to see when our videos go live. And as always, check out our free morning, midday, and closing market podcasts, as well as the Iowa Ag Matters podcast and Pod to Potential. Find those on your favorite podcasting service at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and Podbean. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, I'm Riley Smith. On behalf of Mark Magnuson, Andy Peterson, and Dustin Huffman, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.